Natasha, the conversation that we have this week is going to not only reach, but it's going to touch so many different lives. The individual that we interviewed this week is Jason Adams. He's an educator. He's the head football coach at Rocklin High School, and his impact across the community, and not just the Rocklin area, but in the Northern California area, is deep and wide. And it was such a great conversation, getting to pull back the layers and get to know about him and his family and his mentors in this football. I really enjoyed this conversation.
I did too. And I love when a reputation precedes somebody for the better. So obviously I don't live in the Rocklin community, but I had heard, comments about the coach before we hosted him on the podcast. And so whenever you have that, and you could tell it's just such a meaningful member of the community or somebody who has touched, somebody's life, I think that's just, you want to be that person. And so to take time and sit down and have those conversations with somebody like that, I'm a sucker for those. So I loved the conversation.
Yeah. And for those that are coming in to listen, if you're looking for the X's and O's, you're not going to get this in this episode.
Right.
This is really about the why and the how, and who the man is behind the football program, and the family, and just the overall journey. So really looking forward to everyone listening into this and being able to take away a lot from a lot of different perspectives and stories.
Yeah, it's definitely more than football. And I think that was part of my favorite, or probably my favorite part of the conversation, is how it, went through generations of the family as he's, helping kids that are growing up. Like, it's so much bigger than a sport, and how it impacts and what has helped him grow and other people grow. I think it's just a really, that's the light.
This is a fun one.
Welcome to Tell Us Your Story, the podcast that tells the diverse stories of businesses, leaders, and influencers throughout Northern California. Our mission is to ignite inspiration, foster education, and bring our community together. Join us as we unravel the path to achievement, discovering how these remarkable businesses and leaders navigated obstacles, conquered hardships, and transformed failures into success.
In today's episode, we sit down with educator, teacher, and head football coach of Rocklin High School, Jason Adams. There was a lot to be learned in this conversation. I definitely learned a lot. I know that Natasha did. And three of the key areas that I'm going to touch on, the first being mentors and influencers. Listening to Jason's stories, he talks about his mentor, who happens to be his dad's mentor, and then how this is being passed on to his coaching staff, passed on to his teams and the community. Just the impact that one single mentor can have on generations is something that we always talk about, and is going to be a theme throughout this conversation. And then leadership. Servant leadership continues to be a theme with the great leaders that we talk to, and Jason is definitely one of those. The way that he works with not only his coaching staff as a leader, but then as the student athletes, the parents, the community, the fundraising. There's so many different aspects of leadership that come into play when you think of not just a football coach, but a teacher, and then a leader within the community. There's a lot to be learned in this area. And we have to talk about sacrifice, not just the sacrifice that Jason's made throughout his life and his career, and the amount of time that he's put into not just this program, but football as a whole, but then the sacrifice that his family has had to make, his wife, his children. And then when you think about the entire coaching staff, their families, and then as a community, as everybody rallies together, and then you get down to the student athletes and the sacrifices that they have to make in order to be part of a winning program. So this is an incredible episode that I think everybody is going to really, really enjoy. So stay motivated, stay inspired, and sit back and enjoy this episode of Tell Us Your Story.
Yeah, I grew up in Fremont, California, which is the East Bay. I grew up in a little neighborhood called Glenmore, and my father was raised there as well. So my dad was raised in Glenmore in Fremont, California, went to Washington High School, which is the same high school I attended, along with my sister. My dad graduated in 1965 from Washington High School, and I graduated in 1988. And so My football journey started at age 10. That's as early as you can play in Fremont.
So let's go back a little bit. So how many siblings? You have one sister?
Yeah. So I have a younger sister named Stacy. She's 2 years younger than me in school. We're about 18 months apart.
And then, so growing up, would you say you were middle class, upper class, lower class? Where would you define like social economic?
I would say we're pretty blue collar. My dad, his career was truck driving. So he delivered for a company called Food Maker, but basically he delivered food for Jack in the Box. He drove around. Northern California was his normal path, I guess you would say, or his routes. And my mom, proud of her, man. She never graduated high school. She met my dad right when he got out of Vietnam. They fell in love and wanted to start a family. And pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah.
And so when you think about your youth growing up, were you in a strict household?
Yeah, I mean, discipline was a big part of it, but a lot of love. You know, my parents were, my dad was a hard lover, I guess you would say. And, but you knew he was there to wrestle with you and throw the ball with you. And if we played basketball, I hit the ground most of the time if I went up for a layup. I mean, it was just rough and tumble, but I couldn't walk by him when he was sitting on the couch without a little shot to the shoulder or something. But it was really good. My sister and I, we battled on our own, but we loved each other. We still do. We went through some times together when you're a little one, and some of the tough parenting will make the kids unite a little bit. So hey, we might be screwing around, but right now when Dad comes in, we're on the same side.
Common enemy.
We're teammates.
Yeah.
What kind of, so I'm assuming you'll get into athletics, but what kind of kid were you? When getting in trouble? Were you, academic, shy?
Far from that. I definitely got along with people, and I loved playing any type of game. No matter what the game was, I wanted to play. And, it was common for me to get up in the morning in the summer and either ride my bike over and knock on the door of a couple kids' houses or just start calling them in the morning. I just wanted to play games and get along with everybody. Recess was a big part of school and really never ran into many issues. And that went through high school. I got along with pretty much everybody.
And were you competitive when you wanted to play those games, or was it just fun? Like you just wanted to be included and it was fun? No,
I definitely wanted to win. I mean, if we were playing the game, I wanted to win. And I learned that. It's funny. I learned that holidays, my grandparents on my dad's side lived in Antioch, California, which is about an hour or so away. And so we would go there and, we'd have whatever the holidays that we were celebrating, we'd play a lot of cards, backgammon or cribbage. Just a lot of rummy, a lot of those things. And my grandma on my dad's side, boy, she was a competitor. So when she won, she let you know about it. So you're like, okay, that's definitely a win.
Learn a little.
Because when you lose, she reminds you repeatedly, and it was friendly, but you're like, I got to get better at this game, And so strategy was a big part of a lot of the things we did. And then my parents did a great job of always making sure that we could have some fun together on the weekends. So when I was really little, we had like a boat, and we would take the boat out with a camper, and we go to the Delta. We'd go boating, and we'd boat all day. And then we'd get in the camper, and we'd play some games. We'd fall asleep. We'd do it again, and we'd go home. And then we got a little older, and they got like a motorhome, and the motorhome could tow the boat. So we'd do that. We camped and motorhomed a lot when I was younger, and that was a lot of my weekends. There wasn't travel ball and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know that we would have stayed home for that, even though I was a pretty good athlete and probably would have been able to find a team in travel ball. But it was important to go and be family. And it was really, really kind of fun upbringing. And most of the time it was just me, my sister, and my mom and my dad. We didn't bring a lot of people with us, and I thought it was great.
Yeah, so a different time for sure. I think we're close to the same age. How old are you?
I'm 53.
53. So yeah, I'm almost 50. So you're talking mid to late 80s in that growing up. Yeah. So there wasn't that travel. It was little league in spring, and some football. So when did you get introduced to sports, and what sports did you begin playing?
Yeah, baseball was first. And I don't remember. It was probably whatever T-ball was, 5, 6 years old. Played for Centerville American Little League right there. And it was kind of a part of where our elementary school kids played Little League baseball. And then My dad did not. He wasn't a fan of soccer. So even though my friends played soccer, I didn't play soccer. And then you couldn't start tackle football until you were 10 in Fremont. And so you had to weigh 70 pounds. I was a little bit below, but we found a way to make it happen. So I started playing football. Thought I was going to love it. Was absolutely miserable. I was 10, 11, 12-year-old age group, and I had a rough first year. Ended up finishing off very strong, but it was a very rough beginning.
And what was rough about it?
Well, our coaches coached a different style of football back then.
Yeah.
You either sink or you swim, and it is what it is. I don't think that's the right way to do it now, and I'm glad that every form of football is much safer, and I think the coaches are smarter about how to develop kids. But I did a lot of sinking. And there were tremendous athletes on that team. There ended up being on my little league football team, however many kids it was, 10, 11, 12. We ended up having 5 Division I athletes play on that little league team. Wow. So I would say I got thrown into a hornet's nest a little bit. But coming out of it, I was much stronger and had no idea what it took to really, battle at that age. You didn't know what it was. I never had any idea what conditioning really meant. Never knew what physical work was. And then there's the stuff that goes along with physically getting beat up at practice.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't trade it for anything. That's my experience. It just wasn't fun at the beginning.
And was it a family kind of affair? Like, was the family involved in, the practice and the games and all of that? Or were you kind of just like, did your dad play? Was it, sometimes it's a very family.
Yeah. Well, as far as when I was playing, my parents were very vocal fans. Very vocal fans. You definitely knew who their son was.
We're going to get into some of that.
I love that. Oh, yeah. I can't wait to ask you about the parents.
Oh, geez. Very, very vocal. But look, I love to play catch. I could still play catch to this day. So when my dad would say, "Hey, let's throw the ball around," no matter what it was, we would go play catch. So he was a big part of that piece. But he did not want to coach. He wanted me to earn everything. So my parents were involved in the fact that they would never miss a game. I was never going to be late to practice. And football was one of the things we would sacrifice for. Like, we were not going to go out of town and do the boating, camping thing during football season. That wasn't going to happen.
And so fast forward into high school, do you drop all the other sports? Is it just football? Or are you still doing all that?
Yeah, high school was entertaining, I guess you'd say, because, football starts in the fall. And then I'd never really played organized basketball. I'd never been on a team per se, other than like your 6th grade team in elementary school. But I didn't go out for junior high basketball. I went out for freshman basketball, made the team. Was kind of a role player, figuring it out. Loved the competitive part of it, but I didn't really have a skill set. And then my sophomore year, and then I played baseball as well my freshman year. My sophomore year, I did football. I did not do basketball, and then did baseball again. My junior, went back to football. Obviously, loved that. One of the guys in my neighborhood, a guy named Carl Rober, who's always down playing basketball at the local elementary school. And I would always try and play basketball with those guys. He was the junior varsity coach, and he said, "Hey, you should come out and play for us." And I'm like, "Well, I'm a junior. I can't play basketball on the JV team." He goes, "Yeah, you can. You can play." And I go, "I can? Sure. You can come out and play." So I went out, played JV basketball as a junior. It was one of the funnest experiences I ever had.
I bet, yeah.
Absolutely loved it.
When there's no expectations and you're just going out, that takes a lot of pressure off, I would imagine.
Yeah.
It wasn't your dream sport. Like, I got to make this team. Someone asked you, and you're like, "Yeah, I'll play. I'd love to play."
No, I'd played basketball the whole time with my friends. I just never played organized basketball. I didn't know how to set a screen. I didn't know how to roll the basketball. I think I did, but I didn't really know.
Yeah.
I didn't know plays and stuff, and I learned so much, but I had just the most amazing experience. There was a bunch of guys. We worked hard every day in practice. We had a ton of success in as far as wins and losses were concerned, but there was a lot of hard-working kids on that JV basketball team that made it super fun because I wanted to compete, and I got a chance to compete every day in practice. And then, like I said, we won a lot of games, and guys were cool. It was a fun experience. So
those are the best when it's a fun experience. We've all seen, obviously, you coach, and I've seen kids that just, you can tell they're not having fun, and it's like, this isn't going to be a good memory for them when they're miserable. What was the dream when you were, if you look back to your junior, senior year, what was your dream? Was it school? Was it sports? You want to fly planes, go in the military? What was your, what did you want to do?
Well, I definitely loved football. I loved all aspects of it. I liked the weight training piece. I liked the conditioning piece. I liked the camaraderie. I liked the toughness that was associated with playing the game. I loved my friends that were a part of it. And I had a pretty good social life. So Friday night and Saturday night, was a little bit different. You could have a little bit more fun, and you could do things a little bit, and people didn't challenge your character and think you were going down the wrong road if you went out, just had a little bit of fun on the weekends, but you still treated everybody and everything with respect. You can have fun, you can be a kid, and you don't mean anything, I don't know the right word for it. You're not being disrespectful, like going out and having a little bit of fun. But football was definitely my passion. I really, really enjoyed it. And I wasn't, it wasn't like I was bad at it. So it's nice when you have some success too.
And was that the goal, was to go to the next level, play in college?
Yeah. I mean, the first time I really thought about college, was we're going into my senior year. So it's the summer going into my senior year, and we would go down, we'd play 7-on-7 against other high school teams at Chabot Junior College one day. And then 2 days later, we'd go to Laney Junior College. So Chabot's in Hayward, Laney's in Oakland. They're both, 20 to 30 minutes away. And you go there and you run around and play plays and you're having fun with your friends. Mm-hmm. And my head coach goes, "Hey, the head coach from Laney wants to talk to you." I'm like, "What'd I do?" He goes, "No, he likes you. He thinks you're a good player." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Right on. What's he want to talk about?" He goes, "He just wants to talk to you about football and whether or not you're interested in coming here after." And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, sounds great. I'd love to talk to him." Right. And so same thing with Chabot. Those guys were really interested. And nobody in my family ever had graduated from college. My dad did about a year of college before he enlisted, did the Vietnam thing. So, college was not an expectation in my house. You worked hard and you had fun, and then you found a way to make a living. So I didn't really have a path per se.
And do you remember all of your coaches, like throughout sports at that time? Any of them kind of stand out, or?
I mean, I do have some youth sport coaches and families. Like we have family friends called the Wests, and Rod West was a baseball coach of mine for probably about 4 or 5 years. In Fremont, it was a little different. We played after I played at Centerville American, and then you could join these pony teams. So I signed up for a pony league, and when you were there, you didn't go into a draft and play on different teams every year. So we were just on that team, and so the nucleus of our people were together, which I think is positive in some ways because the families get together, you get to know each other, and you can build some strong bonds. And so Rod West was one of my coaches that I had for the longest period of time. And there were times when my parents would maybe go on a little vacation without us, and I would stay with that family. There were 2 twin boys that were like my age, and they had a younger son named Lyle who was around a lot too. So Trevor and Travis West and Lyle West, those guys were a big part of kind of my youth, if you will, as far as those sports were concerned. I'm still good friends with those people. Lyle actually lives up here in Roseville, so I see him frequently.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a long relationship when you think back.
It lasts a long time.
And so take us through graduating high school and where you go and what you do.
Yeah, well, we'll go back a little bit to the coaching. So I was thinking youth sports there, but my high school coach was a very impactful man. His name was Jim Ingram. And Jim Ingram coached my dad in 1965. So my dad played for him. Yeah. And then when I was getting ready to go to high school, we didn't live in Washington High School's boundaries. So my parents made a point to move before I started high school so that I could go to Washington and play for Coach Jim Ingram, right? So he's affectionately known as Coach I, and he coached for well over 30 years. I think he got into the 40-plus years of coaching down there, and he is a legend for all the things that he did as a coach, but really for the people he impacted.
I was going to say, for your parents to move you into a district to play for him, was it specifically so you could play and play under him? Like, did he have that much of an impact on your dad?
Yeah.
Wow.
Is there a story there?
Yeah, some things are tough, right? So my dad was a really good baseball player, and so I'm like 6'2", and my uncle and my grandpa, all the men in my family are taller. My dad's like 5'10". He's passed away, but he was the runt of the family. So even though he always walked around with a smile on his face, he had a chip too, right? So he could be edgy at times. And so, anyways, really good baseball player, and he got drafted in the by the Baltimore Orioles back in the day, but way down the list and stuff. And so he was playing some junior college baseball, and he ultimately just said, "Hey, you know what? America needs me. I'm gonna go to Vietnam." So my grandparents were very disappointed in his decision. Very disappointed. And so the way he tells it is, Jim Ingram and his wife Pat, they would send him care packages, and they made sure that.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow.
I had that. Wow.
Yeah.
That's very thoughtful.
And so
to say who's impactful in my life, things he did for me before I was even me are really, it's really important for me to kind of continue to thank them.
And did you know when you were going to high school that he had that impact on your dad? And did you understand how heavy it was?
No, I didn't know the depth of it. And just to be clear, my dad did not talk about, going to Vietnam. And he was proud of being a Marine. He was proud of, representing his country and all that stands for. Very proud of that. But he didn't talk about that much. I just know there were times as I got older where he would share kind of the support that he received from that family. And so it wasn't like he put that on my shoulders when I'm going in. Hey, you're going to play for this guy for that reason. He just says, hey, this guy will turn you into man. Right. And that's what he wanted. Right.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible. So he left obviously an impression on you. And was it a butterfly or ripple effect through the way that you end up being as a man and coaching and thinking back to what he did for your dad? Or do you reflect on that in the way that you handle yourself with people that you coach? Or am I drawing the connection too far?
No, it's not too hard to draw, point A to point B. It's not. Mm-hmm. It's really not. So when I finished playing, I went on and played at Chabot, and I don't want to take us too far back, but my first coaching job was with Coach Ingram at Washington High School. So I was fortunate enough to coach with him from 1995 until the fall of 2001. And then I moved up here to Rocklin in 2002. So I know Washington High School and I know Rocklin High School. That's what I know. Right. And I'm thankful for that.
Yes.
So the coaching piece of it, as you were coming up, so some people love to be the player, right? And they're like, I would never coach. I wouldn't want to. Were you kind of giving captain vibes? Did you know you wanted to coach? Was it something you were interested then, or did that come along later?
It's a great question. I guess you could say I just really loved being around the game, and I liked being around where it was home for me, right? Mm-hmm. So like even when I was done playing and I was still playing at Chabot, I would go to games and I was close with the coaching staff. So if I was there, I could be up in the booth with them and hey, I think Tommy's going to be open here in the next play. Hey, we're looking for this or looking for that. Like I just loved it. So it wasn't like that's where I would be. It was comfort zone for me.
Yeah, natural.
And so when you talk about it like that, would you define yourself at the time of like a football geek? Like were you looking at the X's and the O's and looking at the strategy or is it all fun? Like, or was there balance in there?
No, I definitely love the study of film. And the game has evolved so much. I tell our players this all the time. 10 times more than I knew at this age. And that's not even accurate. It's 100 times more.
Yeah.
The game was much simpler then. The game was there was a little bit of chess pieces and stuff like that, but it was more like, I'm going to stick my face through your chess plate, and then I'm going to keep doing that until you break down or I break down. But most of us kind of knew the plays that were coming. That being said, I loved watching film, and so we used to have the VHS tape, right? And he'd rewind, and he'd go, well, are they on offense or defense right now? It'd be super grainy and stuff, but I loved finding some sort of advantage, I guess. Our coaches did a great job of watching the film and then presenting the things that we were going to see in the game. They always did a great job of that. But every once in a while, you'd find your own little nugget. Hey, the receiver cheated in a little bit, or he widened out, or he backed off the line, or you saw a little head nod between a quarterback and a receiver, and you're like, hey, I think this is when they do that play.
Yeah. So I don't want to go too far down this, but when you think about that experience and what you had passion watching that film and enjoy it, would you say the youth today, do you find that a lot like that? Or is it a grind to get them to say, hey, you're coming in, you're watching film? Or do you still have those nuggets of players that are like, I love this piece. I'm going to put 2 hours in watching this film and find it. I mean, social media, everything that's like, there's so much to distract the youth today is I guess why I'm asking that question. Is it hard to get them to watch it?
Those that care, they watch a lot. So there's a storage place called Huddle, and all film is in there. All of our instructions in there. It's a great app. Communication, everything goes through there. But our coaches do a good job, as do all the coaches in our area. But our coaches do a good job of being very clear and concise about, hey, take a look at these plays. These are the plays they like out of this formation or this personnel group or this situation. And on that little app, we can see which players watch the most film.
Oh,
By the way, we film our own practice and we upload that and we critique it. We put notes in, right? So there's a lot to it. So the kids that love it, you're going to see anywhere from 2 to 7 or 8 hours a week where they watch the film, whether it be practice film or opponent scout. And there are kids that turn it on and you see like 2 minutes, and that's really them scanning their messages of whether or not they need to bring the other cleats or wear the white shirt. And so, look, it's tough when you see those things.
Yeah.
And when those guys make mistakes, they hear about it because they're not doing the homework off the field. It's somewhere in there, it's about 50-50.
Yeah, I was asking an obvious question. So where you see someone with 7 hours versus someone with 30 minutes, the one with 7 hours, are you seeing the difference in play and where they're lining up, where they need to be, all of the little things compared to the person who's not?
Yeah, a lot of times those same guys do all the little things at practice, and so they're generally more successful, right? Now that big men upstairs might not have given them as much talent, but they're extremely consistent at what they can do. My point being, like, if it's a kid who doesn't have the best skill set, he's not the biggest, strongest, fastest guy for the position, but he knows his job. He can play. He can overcome the fact that he has inadequacies maybe physically, but because he loves the game and he's so passionate about doing his assignment right, he can play over a kid who might have some of the measurables.
Yeah, I would imagine it's if you're putting that much time into film, you're putting that much time into your body, you're putting that much time into being early, all of the things add up to playing the game, not just the film, but it's probably an indicator of these individuals are giving everything. Not that the other ones aren't giving everything, but these are giving more.
Yeah, they do a lot of little things. They hydrate better. They get a little bit more rest. They do a lot of those things a little better. We talk about all those things, but those that have discipline, and we see those kids, in our age group, we see those kids with extreme discipline. They eat a little bit better, and they do all the little things, and then they just are consistent performers.
All right, I'm going to take us back because I'm just geeking out over here. Go ahead.
So I was going to say, I have so many questions about how you coach and some of those impacts, but to kind of set the stage, a lot of listeners will be Rocklin, and I'm sure parents and things, but what is your current title or coach and like, I guess where did you start and kind of what were the growth there?
Yeah. So I officially became a varsity football coach, I guess you would say, in 1995. At Washington High School, varsity and JV practiced together. There were 5 total coaches, and we coached them combined. So 5 coaches for 2 levels. There was about 50 kids total. And so I was a defensive back coach. That's what I played in college. And then after my first year, our defensive coordinator and one of our kind of key assistants, they left and took a job over at Moreau Catholic. He took a head coaching job there. So that left us with 3, right? And so we had our head coach, then the offensive coordinator, and they go, hey, you're the defensive coordinator. I'm like, geez, that seems like a lot, right? Cool. And then we brought a couple guys on. So we made it work. But, the way our program worked is Coach I did all the practice planning. We would be a part of the evaluation on how to, scheme for the next team. But he wrote the practice schedule. He basically told you what we were going to do. And then, he said, you get to call the defense. And so I learned very early that we play our base defense and we do a good job of preparing for our opponent. We don't need to see our whole defense. So if, let's say we have 10 defensive things we can do, and I start rolling out the second and third thing on the first drive, he's going to call a timeout. I'm going to get yelled at, and we're going to get back to our base defense.
Yeah. So he gave you a clear path.
Yeah. So very fundamental. Get your guys to play hard and fast, and just understand their assignments, and then do that. So I was able to do that under Coach Ingram's guidance, if you will, up until 2001, and then my wife and I wanted to move up here so we could start a family. So we bought a house in Cameron Park in the fall of 2001, and I didn't have a teaching job yet. I had a teaching job at Washington High School.
Okay, I was going to ask. So while you're coaching, you're teaching as well.
Yeah. So I got coaching job there, and then I got up here and just was hoping and praying that I could land a teaching job up here. And we lived on the Highway 50 side. And I thought of maybe Oak Ridge or Union Mine or Ponderosa would be a good opportunity, but the Rocklin job became available.
And I'm going to stop you there before you get into the Rocklin job. So I'm going to take you back just a little bit to parallel this. When do you meet your wife?
Yeah.
So what year do you meet your wife?
I met her probably about 2 years prior. I met her. My sister used to work at Washington Hospital, which is a hospital in Fremont, in the ER. And I brought in a kid who had broken his ankle and in my drill. And so my head coach was really upset with me. These things happen. He said, take him there and bring him back when he's healthy. I'm like, okay. It's going to be 6 to 8 weeks. But
It'll take me a bit.
He didn't make mistakes with Coach I. He would make you pay for it. You know what I mean? Like, make your drill safer next time was the lesson. But anyways, my sister said, hey, I want you to meet this person while you're here. It was Kim Lyon. And ultimately, we ended up going on a date about 2 years later. So in 1999, we met. And then we started dating the whole thing. And then we got married in 2001.
2001, which would put you where in your coaching career?
I was 6 years, completing my 6th year.
Okay.
Right.
And then you guys let's bring you back. So you want to start a family.
Yeah.
And the Rocklin position comes open.
Yeah, we want to start a family, and where we were at in Fremont, we would have had to rent for a long time if we were going to be in an area that we wanted to be in, which would have probably tried to be in Washington High School's boundaries, right? And I was teaching there, and I didn't even have any aspirations to be like the head coach or anything. And Coach Ingram was getting older at that time, but I just knew that it was not the right place for us. So we bought out Cameron Park. We could afford a lot more than you could afford there, and we could purchase. We could buy. And
was that hard? It seems that you were very rooted in where you were. I would assume that move was
very hard.
Yeah,
very hard.
Yeah,
but change is good, and so it was good for us. And we move out there, and I'm lucky enough to get one of the interviews at Rocklin High School. They had an opening in PE, and they were looking specifically for a defensive coordinator at Rocklin High School. It was crazy, like the coincidence, because PE jobs do not open up very often. And so the job opens up, and I go over and I interview. I get one of the 5 interviews, which is like 200 plus applicants.
Wow.
So I get one of the 5 interviews. Was lucky enough to get the job. Whether I was the first choice or not, I don't know, but they offered it to me, and I was smart enough to say yes. And we did that. And then, by 2003, my daughter Megan was born. But then, kind of all the timing of it all worked out really, really well. But it was a pretty big gamble. My wife is a very successful nurse. She used to be in the ER. Her whole goal in life was to be a flight nurse.
Oh, wow.
And so she was working for Stanford's Life Flight program at the time. And for the first year or so, she commuted back and forth down there. It was very challenging. But, once my daughter Megan was born, then it made it harder. And then she started working for a company called Reach Air Ambulance, and they have bases all over Northern California. So then she was able to find something a little bit closer. That's kind of how that piece all fell together.
And so how many children do you have?
I have two.
So when is she have Megan, and then the second?
Yeah, my son Austin was born in 2005.
And you're coaching, you're teaching, and you're growing roots in Rocklin. Did you immediately love it, or did it take you some time?
Yeah, it was very interesting. So, like, I get the job at Rocklin, and like my last day teaching at Washington High School was like June 16th, and June 17th I got on a bus in Rocklin, and we went down to Fresno for a 4-day contact camp. And I was meeting new players, I was meeting new coaches. Like, I knew nobody except the head coach from an interview kind of a thing. And it's kind of on the fly. All right, let's get this thing going. And it was a really talented group of young men. I didn't get a chance to spend an off season with them, but they had a lot of talent, a lot of character. It would have been a fun group to spend a whole year with, or maybe 4 years at the high school with them. But I got that opportunity to coach that group, and we lived in Cameron Park for 2 years. And I told Greg when I got the job, Greg Benzel was our head coach, by the way. I told him, hey, look, I'm going to give you 2 years. In 2 years, I'm either going to move my family to Rocklin, and this is where we'll be, or I'm going to get a job over here in the Highway 50 side, somewhere where I can live in the same community that I coach. That's where I wanted to be. That was my goal.
And so with that adjustment coming in new, when you look back, were you accepted right away? Did you feel accepted? Was it an easy transition into the community, the players, the coaches, or were there some ups and downs? Like, when I think of going into a new job and you have all these great expectations, sometimes it's great. Everything works out. It's good culture fit. Sometimes it's not for a while. What would you think that experience going back, what was it like?
It was phenomenal. The Rocklin family open arms. Great opportunity.
Yeah.
If you work hard and you treat people with respect, you get it back, right? And geez, what an opportunity.
Yeah, so
awesome.
You're clearly touched by when you think back to that and you're talking about some of those characteristics. Does those go back to your mom and dad? Where does this foundation for you come from?
I just think a ton of respect for people that work hard and are honest and humble, and that's who they were. My dad drove a truck for 36 years, never took a sick day. That guy punched the clock. Boom. Punch the clock. Punch the clock. Punch the clock. Punch the clock. That's what he did. And I didn't finish earlier. My mom, she didn't graduate high school. And they started a family pretty young. And then she got into being a teller at Fremont Bank. By the time she was done, when her career ended, she was the branch manager of the largest branch in Fremont Bank. So let's say they had 6 branches. She worked her way up. It wasn't that she wasn't capable. It's that life was more important. So she prioritized family and that piece. But ultimately, she grew as an individual and a professional, and she had a great career.
Yeah. So as I listen in, their example comes through you and the way that you look at people, their hard work and everything. So we talk a lot on the show about mentors and the people that are important to us and the impact that it has. And then 100 people down the road, you're a coach. So you talk to all these different people.
So when we talk about your progression into coaching, it seems like something that's very natural, very, we can tell it means a lot to you. Have you grown in that coaching? Were you successful right away? Did you realize oh man, it's harder to coach than it is to play? And did you have to really work and grow at it? Or have you always just kind of been a natural at it?
Well, I of course you grow. I think you do if you do any self-reflection. And I do a lot of that, especially coaching. But, it's about people. It really is. And if we have a common interest, and football brings us together, then just do it with, passion. But you got to care for people, right? Because, if you have 10 players in a room, at some point in time, there's going to be the best player and then there's going to be the worst player. If we were just being honest and evaluating, right? Well, you got to care for that 10th best player as much as you care for the first one, right? You just do. And then, get that person as close to their ceiling. We can get every player as close to their ceiling and we get maximum production out of them. And that starts with how they feel when they're at practice, how they're treated as a person and not just as a player. It's not just performance based. It's based off who you are as a person. And so that piece I think I was good at. I think I'm very empathetic with those that either have troubles in life socially, maybe at home, or maybe aren't as talented and they have all the desire to be, the best player on the team, but they bust their tail trying to be the best player and the best teammate they can be. Why not celebrate that person just as much? And so that part I think I'm good at. But I think I grew a little bit in that because early on I was trying to find the best players so that we would make sure we'd win. But I think I did a good job building relationships with kids from day one.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, we live in the corporate world. So everything you're talking about, whether it's corporate world or wherever you're at, on a football field, basketball, baseball, is leadership. But that doesn't just come natural. Like, how did you study it? Did you study? Did you have people that, were mentors or leaders that taught you those specific things? Like, I was a Marine, so I got out of the Marine Corps and I thought one way to lead, and that's not the way, that wasn't the right way. Like, it got some things done, but I had to study, I had to read. So how did you evolve?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think, I was lucky to coach under Coach Ingerman, play for him too. And when you're younger, you just think kind of that, black and white. You either did it or you didn't. And when I started coaching for him, I learned my very first year, we had a player who was a little bit on the edge. He wasn't as consistent with, being on time. And on Friday night, he might not do the assignment perfectly, but he'd get the job done. So he might do his own thing to make the play. And I was like, you can't do that because it's going to hurt us down the road. And I started getting on that kid one time and he goes, hey, I'll coach him. You coach your guys. I'm good. And I was like, I don't get it, right? So then, at one point in time, I had a conversation with him. He goes, you don't know the depth of that young man. You don't know what he's going to respond to. So when he starts doing those things, I'll take care of it. And I was like, wow, I never thought that's who you are, because if you were to see Coach I, he's a big, burly man and physically very he could scare the daylights out of you.
Yeah, intimidating.
Very intimidating, right? So you're like, I thought that's what worked. I thought that's why we won. We were just tougher than people. Yeah, and we are tougher than people, but we also know how to coach our people up, and we know how they're going to respond. I was like, whoa, I got a lot to learn.
Yeah, pivotal moment
For sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
Go ahead.
How many years altogether have you been coaching?
So 95 to the fall of 03, so that's 28.
28.
28 or 29, something like that. Somewhere in
It's
there.
a fantastic run.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's still going. So interesting. How do you think your players see you? Do you think they describe you that same way of like, from the outside might seem tough, but then it's caring? What do you think they'd say?
I would say so. Know this. I talk about coaching them a lot. Like our kids, I tell them about lessons I learned, right?
Yeah.
And kind of the message, and maybe some ways they get it. Like as a player, this is the message I would receive. And as a coach, this is the message I want to deliver. But I'm trying to grow as a coach too. But our kids know that at any given time, all hell could break loose at any given time. They don't know why. Mm-hmm. They just know you better start moving at a quicker pace, right? But if I make a mistake with my response, if it is sort of a over-the-top response, they know that I'll circle back and say, here's why, or I made a mistake with that response and it wasn't appropriate. And I'm trying to limit those things. But in some ways, football, you sort of need it too. Sometimes you just need high energy, a lot of this, what appears to be anger, and it just rallies the crew together and the hearts start pumping a little harder. And next thing you know, we're going out and we're playing better. We're saying the same darn words, but we said it with a little bit more enthusiasm.
We got a little more passion behind that one.
And then it becomes a forward lean and we start being more successful. So I think our kids get me for the most part. But I will tell you, I make mistakes. And there's many a time where we get on a kid pretty good. but you can't let them go home without telling them that you care about them. And I think we're pretty darn good at that. And that's the one thing that I share with our coaches is you be you. Don't try and be some other coach. Don't try and be your high school coach. Don't try and be myself or one of the other coaches that you have respect for on our staff. Be you, right? And then if you do get on a kid pretty good, you got to love him up before he goes home. You got to tell him you care. And if you put time in, most of the times you can overcome a mistake you might make as a coach.
Yeah, and it's a good spot on that question. So friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, has some recordings that we want to play for you. And you're going to tell us.
We better get the tissues. For me.
Okay, I'm going to play this one first.
I think a few words that I would use to describe Coach Adams would be intensity and charismatic. It doesn't matter if his guys are 10-0 or 2-8, he gets them fired up and ready to roll. But I think the main word I would use is passionate, whether it's football, friends, or family. He's all out, all in. He's going to give you everything he's got, and that's why I love him to death. And some life lessons, obviously, accountability, responsibility. He does a great job of making you a great football player, but I think he does an even better job of making you a great young man. And that's why I love him, and I couldn't be more grateful to have him in my life. So I love you, Jay.
Who was it?
Who was it?
Jared Mater.
Yeah. So Brock, everyone knows Brock O'Haron in Rocklin. He got us a couple. So when you hear that type of feedback, how does it hit you? What does it feel like?
It's love. We get it's a cool opportunity to get out there and grow people, right? We're lucky we get to share that very formative time in their life where they're learning what it's like to really work hard, what it's like to be challenged as a person, what it's like to care for others, and so if they feel like you moved them in the right direction during that time, or if you like physically and emotionally move them to a place that they probably weren't going to get without you or that experience, it's very rewarding. And then we get to share that, right? Like I get to share that. My relationship with Jared is that's mine. I get to keep it just as he does, right? And I'm very thankful for those relationships we get. And we get, if we do it right, we get about 40 some odd kids that'll try football and freshmen. And if we can get 25 to play till they're seniors, we've done a heck of a job. Because it's not easy and it's not for everybody. And there's other things that are important to them. It's really important that we go, hey, we're a part of this experience if you want it. If you want to be in, we're here. But if you decide not to play football, I still want you in my classes. I'm not going to hold any ill will towards you. But just that relationship piece is really, really special. And I feel lucky to have so many of them.
Yeah, I love it. I can tell. I'm going to play you two more.
How long ago did you coach that player that we played?
Jared is probably a 13 or 14 graduate.
Oh,
and
wow.
My relationship with Jared's a little different. When his family moved up from Monterey, his father wanted to jump in and start coaching with us, Rich Mater, and so we brought him on board. And he was in our program for a number of years. And then I remember watching Jared play Little League football. I remember him watching be the little chubby kid that could barely move. And the next year, I'm watching like, is Jared 55? Yeah, that's Jared. I go, man, he's moving pretty good. What happened to me? Your voice? He's doing all right. He's going to be all right player for us, And then he was just a leader. Jared is an incredible leader. So Jared's now our freshman head coach. Oh, wow. Jared and his wife Morgan got married last year. I was actually the officiant of their wedding, which I'd never done before. So he is literally family to us.
Oh, very cool.
And, if they go out of town, my son will go watch their house or the dogs. And same thing when my kids were little and I was coaching. I should say this. When I was little, my kids were little and I was doing off-season stuff. And Jared was like a senior and not training with us after school. He would pick my kids up from elementary, take them home, do homework with them, and do all that kind of stuff, right?
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it's
a lot more than football. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Let me play these two here real quick.
Yeah.
I'll put you on the spot. If you can't guess them, I'll edit it out. Otherwise, I'll leave this in.
I know they are.
A few words to describe Coach Adams would be supportive, knowledgeable, and motivating. He not only makes you a better athlete, but a better person as well.
That's Nolan O'Haron.
That is Nolan.
Yeah. Nolan's story is interesting, right? Because Nolan was just all energy guy, right? But he didn't love the game off the field. Like, he'd work hard, but he didn't love the kind of the science of the game. He didn't want to do the film as much, and he didn't want to do all those things. And after his junior year, he did an okay job in the weight room going into his senior year, but he didn't work like he was capable of. And sort of came to a head. And I think he was on the fence of playing his senior year, which would have been a real challenge for him, because he would have had to tell his dad he's not going to play, and he knew how much it meant. But, like, his dad would have supported it, obviously, but he would have known he was making a mistake. And we met, like, the night before the season started, before we had our first practice. I go, I think we need to talk, because I want you to know I really care about you, and you're going to help us win games. But if your heart's not in it, don't play football. Do not play football. It's not the right thing for you. The right thing is that you are all in for whatever you do, and you're just not there right now. And for whatever reason, like, knowing that he didn't have to, but he wanted to, like, it flipped. And his senior year, he did so well. We moved both his offensive and defensive position, and he knew his assignments on both sides of the ball so well that he also knew some of the guys around him.
Yeah, I remember his senior year.
It was an incredible
year.
It was an amazing transformation. It was all between his ears. It was all about the way he felt about it. And in some ways, just telling him that he didn't have to play, it was like the best thing that ever happened for him.
Yeah, it's another one of those leadership qualities, just having the conversation. Otherwise, that senior year might be completely different. The pressure could have been there that didn't need to be.
Yeah, and I didn't want to sell him a bag of goods, because, if he was out there and he wasn't into it, I was going to have to tell him the truth every day. And that would have been unpleasant, like, hey, you're not here for the right reasons, and that would not have been good. Most kids appreciate trust. The truth, as do adults, right? The truth is
absolutely
not always easy to hear, but it really is it takes all the pressure off once it's put out there on the table,
Oh, I had to learn that. It's taken a minute. I'm like, I let this go on too long. Like, yeah, for the best for both of us, let me just tell you outright right now,
Yeah.
So that's a lesson. Yeah, it took me a little while still working on it, but.
All right, one more.
So I'm the guy that got to play against Jason Adams in high school, play with him in junior college, and then coach with him at Rocklin High School. One of the best lessons that he taught me early on in my coaching career is the player doesn't care about what you know. They only want to know that you care. And I think that really symbolizes who Jason Adams is as a person, first and foremost.
So that's Brock, clearly. Everybody in Rocklin knows Brock.
Yeah, that's the mayor.
Mayor of Rocklin. And it was his idea that when we told him we were going to meet with you or got together, he's like, hey, this would be a great idea if we got these recordings.
Yeah.
So Brock got those for us.
Yeah.
And so you guys actually played against each other going way back?
Yeah, Brock went to Moreau Catholic. It's amazing how many people went to Moreau Catholic. Some of the people who lived in Washington High School's boundaries and drove right by our school on their way out to Hayward to go play and go to school. My wife actually went to Moreau Catholic as well. And some of our other players who are currently on our roster, their dads played at Moreau too. But Brock was a heck of a player. He's a year older than me and just a dynamic athlete. He was extremely fast, physical football player and all those things. And we played some football together at Chabot. And then, when we needed a position coach, and I approached Brock, it's got to be 10 years ago now. And I said, hey, man, we really need a guy. We need a guy. But we need a defensive line coach. And he's like, I don't know anything about it. And I go, perfect. Perfect guy. You're the perfect guy. Because we don't want a guy who knows about it. We want a guy who cares about kids. And I know who you are as a person. Like, you love kids. You love kids. And he's been doing that in our community forever. But, he got out there, and the guys that played for Brock, they played so hard, so passionately, because that's the way he coached them. He could say or do anything with those guys, and they'd think it's the greatest coaching technique ever. And, he was really good at it. I keep trying to pull him back in. We might have him back in. I don't know.
This is the pitch right here.
Listen in after the podcast.
So we're at 50 minutes. I want to spend some time talking about the program and just some random curious questions. These times go fast. So you have a storied program at Rocklin. So we had gotten to, you were going to give 2 years. How long have you been head coach now?
Yeah, so 2002, the fall of 2002, I want to share this story with you. So the fall of 2002, our class president also played defensive back for us. His name was Chad Pruitt. And he gave a speech on 9/11, 2002. Moved me. I was like, man, that was special. These are the people at Rocklin High School. And he would be standing around in between, before practice or during a water break or something, and I'd hear kids talking about their AP classes, and they'd be talking about how they got they got homework to do and they got a study group. And I was like, man, these are different conversations than I had when I was in high school, and I'm like, man, this place seems pretty special. Like, these people care. And the parents, and I'd never been to a team dinner in my life, and I loved my high school experience. I'd never been to team dinner. We finish we're getting ready for our first game, and some families have us over in their house, and they give us all this food, and the kids bring tables and chairs and clean up, and kids talk, and then the next week we did again. And I'm like, man, this is what you do here, right? Like, this is part of the experience. And I'm like, it sure feels like home, right? It sure feels like home. So we moved almost 2 years to the month that we purchased in Cameron Park. We moved over to Rocklin and bought a home, and we got our family going. So I coached at Rocklin up until 2018 under the leadership of Greg Benzel. And Greg Benzel is a tremendous leader of people. Just a great man, and probably one of the most honest, humble guys you're going to come across. And he did a great job of leading our program and kind of showing me different ways to approach things too. I only knew the Washington High School way. I only knew the coaching room way. And I coached my own style, but I definitely appreciated all the things that Greg brought to the table. I also appreciated that he gave me complete autonomy on the defensive side of the ball. He trusted me to do my job. He trusted me to make sure we have the right guys and coaching our guys. And he let me be the off-season weight training guy, which I had a lot of passion for. So I felt like I got to do everything I wanted to do without having to make sure we could fundraise and stand in front of the parents on banquet, do a lot of this stuff. It's the greatest thing ever, because during my interview way back in 2002, one of the questions was, do you want to be the head coach? Or maybe it was a head coach. I forget how it was phrased. And I was like, not really interested in that. I'm interested in getting in the trenches with the guys and being with them in the weight room and the classroom and on the field. And that's what I want to do, right? That's what I knew. And I think that answer wasn't what everybody on the panel wanted to hear, but that's okay. I was just being honest, right? Yeah. And so anyways, I worked under Greg's tutelage till 2018. I think we did a heck of a job together, but he was clearly our head coach and did a great job of it. And then he decided that, it was time to step away. So in 2019, I interviewed for the job. And I think at the time it was the right time for me, because when my kids were little, I was not going to miss anything. And I'm not saying I didn't miss things as a coach, because I still put a lot of time in. But there were definitely things that I would have had to miss if I was a head coach. And so my kids were both entering high school or in high school at that time. And so it really made it a smoother transition. And the relationships I had built with people from 2002 up to that time made me, I think, the right hire. Whereas, let's say in 2002, I was ready to be a head coach. I wouldn't have known anybody in the community. I wouldn't have been able to find the right people to put in front of our kids. And we might have failed a little bit, because if you don't have good, solid people coaching your kids, you're not going to have, you're not going to have a successful program.
Yeah. So you've been incredibly successful. Or aside from, difficult way to ask the question, within your bubble, I'm sure obviously you know all of the football accolades. Do you understand how people view the Rocklin program outside of Rocklin and the success it's had, and you as a coach? Are you aware of it, sensitive to it, care about it? You guys are a storied program. Like, what you've done even this past year is super successful. with some really big powerhouses you guys are playing.
Yeah, I don't think that stuff matters much. The matters is, that our parents believe this is the right place for their kids to go to school. And that our kids believe that the message we send every day, work hard, accountability, treat people the right way, have respect for all of those that are on our campus. I think that's what's most important. And, those other things, when you get, honored as a coach of the year, all that kind of stuff, but maybe this year, because we won, I received an award, or maybe a couple years ago, but there's other coaches out there that maybe did a better job. They just didn't have all the right, stuff in the cabinet. Maybe they worked harder. Maybe they did a better job of creating a positive experience for their kids, even though they didn't have as much talent, and I, at my stage now, I choose to I want to like the other people who are head coaches. I want to like the other coaches in the area, because I think we're all very important for our campus and for our community. So, to see somebody who gets an award or gets recognized and maybe they haven't won as many games, I think that's really powerful. I think it's important, because the high school football experience is special. It's different than other sports. It just is.
Yeah.
So anyways, to talk about us being a storied program, you're always one injury or one mistake on a Friday night from everybody saying you're having a horrible season, and it is what it is. Those things are going to happen. We're going to have a down year here. It might be next year. It might be a couple years from now. But if we can create positive experiences in January and February and March and April, we tend to have positive experiences in August and September and October.
And I'm an athlete and a competitor. I would say those experiences are even better when you win. Fair statement?
For sure.
Yeah, he doesn't want to give up the wins. He loves it, but let's keep them both going.
So as you're going through and you're having success and you're winning, does the pressure increase? Or year in, year out, it's the same for you? Like, do you feel like you have to beat last year, or there's more people looking, or any of that pressure come onto you?
I don't think so. I mean, everybody puts pressure on themselves. I would say there was a couple years where we were winning games and I wasn't happy because I felt like we could perform better. And I was too results oriented on what was going on Friday night. I was too results oriented. And so we've shifted our focus to what's going on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We film practice on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We evaluate that practice with our kids as well. And so there's so much more that's gained from evaluating what's going on in your practice field. And then the results on Friday night, a lot of times they follow that, right? And so when we go out and somebody outperforms us and you go, hey, look, we had 3 great practices. I'm proud of the way we prepared. Now, we're going to have to get better, but sometimes the other guy's better than you. Sometimes we drop the ball when we don't drop the ball. We didn't drop the ball at all in practice, and you drop the ball on Friday night without a guy touching you. That's going to happen, right? But I'm very comfortable with our process now, and when you do that well, the results a lot of times you can live with better.
What are you most proud of with your program?
The banquet's tough because you're saying goodbye to people, and you want to also make sure you're thanking your parents who contribute a lot. Our parents contribute a lot to the experience that our kids have. But seeing our kids and our families at that night kind of together and celebrating that experience that's gone, it won't be forgotten, but it's gone. I really like when it all comes together, when our kids get to hear the thank yous to the parents and then our coaches sing the praises of the young men as their experiences often are ending, right? Because it's a varsity banquet and we're telling how much we appreciated them. I like that. It's a nice culmination, and then they get to move on with their life.
What's the toughest part? What's the toughest part of coaching on your job?
The night that it ends, the night that it ends, especially if you're having one of those magical runs where we've been able to find a way to win, we just find a way to win. Challenge ourselves with scheduling and play the best teams we possibly can. And in our league, everybody's really talented. And then you try and go out and find challenges outside of your league, right? Like the year before, we lost to a really good Manteca team. They ended our season, and it was painful. And I felt like There was a possession in that game where I got in our offensive coordinator's ear and said, hey, I'd like to see this play. And it didn't work. And then it kind of went backwards from there. And we had the lead and we lost. And I wanted that game back. So we wanted to make sure we could get those guys on the schedule. And we were fortunate enough to get Manteca on our schedule this year. And this isn't a shot at Manteca, but like when you lose your last game, I want to run it back right now.
Yeah, it stays with you.
I want to run it. It's like my grandma's talking smack to me because she just beat me back at me. Let's run that thing back.
Bringing it all the way back.
Before the turkey dinner hits the table, give me one more chance. You know what I mean? Let's go.
Let's talk about parents and the athletes themselves for just a couple of minutes. And like both of my boys played basketball. So, and Donovan, you know my son, he played football freshman year. Like I wanted him to play football, and he played his freshman year. And he said, "This isn't for me," and broke my heart at the time. He moved on. It was tough in the house for a few weeks. And I didn't play football. I just loved the sport. Like, what would you say to parents that, the parents that think their kids should play all the time, or the athlete that thinks they should play all the time, or not everyone is going to get what they want. There's never an athlete that comes in and gets to play the entire 60 minutes. So you're making decisions. And I'm sure there's parents that question it or athletes that question it, and maybe they don't come directly to you, but how do you handle that? What message would you give them?
The truth. I mean, it's a challenge. Let's just say that we have 25 seniors on a team, right? And that may mean we have about 25 juniors. So we got like 50 kids on a team. There's only 11 guys on offense. There's only 11 guys, and we can only put 11 out there, which means a large majority of our kids are standing on the sideline. And so we have to get those kids to buy into what we're doing. And most of the time, our kids know the truth because our coaches are honest with their evaluation, and we film a lot of practice, and they can kind of measure themselves in the drills. They know if they're faster or stronger or, blocking or tackling better than their peers. But, we foster the communication during the season. Like, hey, if you're not comfortable with where you're at right now, talk to your coach. Talk to him before practice. Talk to him after practice. Talk to your coach. He'll be honest with you. And then, if you're not comfortable with that answer, and your parents want to speak with me, then I'll talk to them. But I'm going to tell them all the same things that their position coach was. And it's like, hey, he's just a step slow here, or he's missing some assignments, and we need the most consistent player at that spot. And it's our job to our campus and our community to put the player that's going to be most consistent and give us the best opportunity to win on Friday night, because it's competitive sports. And
so how many times because we all see things through our own lens, how many times do you have a parent say, but this, you're not seeing this, and you're not going to convince them that you're starting the best player? Does that happen a lot? Is it every season? Maybe it's every couple season. Does it get to you, or does it get handled with other coaches?
I would say it happens at least once or twice a year where there's really disappointment in either playing time or the position or the amount of times, a player might touch the ball, right? Whether running back, receiver, quarterback throwing the ball, whatever, those things. And what I've learned in life is to try and see things through the other person's lens. Like, you have to see it through their lens. And if I'm looking at it through their lens, I understand where they're coming from. Don't take it personal. I want to hear what you have to say. I'm going to validate your feelings as best I can, but I also have to kind of share it through our lens, right? And then, knowing that a parent might think, hey, if my son has to have this, he doesn't get a scholarship, he might not have the opportunities in life. I understand the way you're thinking. I get it. But that's not conducive to our team being successful. And, and so we just have to share that. Like, that's your view, and it's okay. And one of the things that's helped me is being a parent of student athletes. And both of mine have moved on and played sports at Rocklin High School, and they're no longer attending. But, once you've been a parent, you can really understand a parent's perspective better. And then you're just more understanding. So I think in some ways that, my experiences as a person on this planet allows others to hear my words and think that they're sincere.
And so as a parent, and I went through it with my kids, and they both went through Rocklin High School, and they had great experience and loved Coach Taylor. And I remember how intense I was, and then it gets done, it all ends. And then I'm like, you know what? I wish I would have enjoyed that a little bit more versus worrying about playing time or this or that or where we were getting. How many of your kids come back and that maybe went through that, like, I wish I had more playing time, but then that fades away, I would imagine, that they just remember the experience and how fun it was. Is that the majority of what you hear years later?
I think so. I think so. I think so. I talked about that team dinner thing earlier, right? We do a heck of a job of recognizing the kids that aren't starting on Friday night. And there's a ton of players. In order to be successful in football, you have to have a ton of players who don't play or aren't getting as many reps on Friday night that are really good on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We try and celebrate those guys while we're watching film of the practice and say, look how well you're playing here. You are challenging Timmy or Tommy. This is an awesome football play, and you might not play much on Friday night. If this game goes and it's really challenging, you're just a step behind. But thank you for getting us prepared. And when we do that, kids, they get to take that with them. They know they competed, and you get to a certain level, you go, man, I was pretty good, but the guy ahead of me was really good, and that part that's why competitive sports are so good. They tell the truth. Competitive sports tell the truth. The better team wins, usually the better player plays, and that's important.
Yeah, and those kids get to be part of, whether it's the winning or the losing, they get to be part of the team, and they're contributing. And I just remember seeing those kids being part of they work just as hard as everyone else.
It's such good perspective. There's even adults like in the corporate world, right? If you're anyone who's willing to put in the work and not, you said over half the team is, doing the work and not playing, and to keep them on, keep them motivated, keep them appreciated, feeling valued, even in just like life, just like what a lesson. That's hard to do.
So we've gone for a while, so I want to give you an opportunity. One, what would you say to all of the younger athletes that want to come play at Rocklin in the program and the Junior Thunder, or they're coming up or they want to come over? What's your message if they're going to come play for your program?
Geez. I mean, it's an experience, right? It's a life experience, and it'll be your life experience. If you work really hard and you trust the process, you will grow as a person, and you will make tremendous friends, because the more you put into anything, the more you get out of it, right? So if you choose to work really hard and you choose to try and maximize your experience as a student athlete, you can get challenged academically, and you can be challenged athletically, and then you find like-minded individuals, and sharing that experience together will be a bond that it never goes away. I mean, there are kids who played for us at 8-10 years ago. If they're in town and they all get together, and some live out of state, some live out of region. If they're at the local watering hole, I might get a text every once in a while. 10:30, 11 o'clock, right? And I'm like, man,
coming through.
And I show up and they're like, hey, and they want to start talking about things that they experienced together, and I was a part of a little bit. Like, hey, babe, I think I got to go for an hour.
That's awesome.
She's all sure.
Those things they get to keep, right? And I know I keep saying that these are life experiences. And the other piece that I really, really firmly believe in is playing as many sports as you can. And it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge because you have to put a lot of skill-specific work into being good at anything in this area, because everybody works really hard. There's a lot of tremendously talented people as far as student athletes are concerned, and there's a lot of resources put in. So parents are willing to put time and effort in, whether it's them coaching or finding the right coach or getting this specific training. And so you can do it. You can do it, but it's not easy. It's not easy. That means you have to outwork your peers. It means you have to sacrifice some of your social life here and there. But if you choose to do that, you get to take those life experiences with you forever. And the other piece is, I 100% believe in keeping young people busy, their schedule completely full, and they tend to be more successful academically when their schedule's full. There's not big holes in time where they don't have structure. They tend to not be successful academically when they go, oh, I can do it at this time, I can do it at this time. Nope, you can only do it at this time, and you have to plan your days out strategically so you can get all the work done. I think it bodes well for being successful when you get out of high school.
Oh, without a doubt. I'm going to be in my 50s and set the time, go do the work. Absolutely agree. what else overall? Any message you want to, like, Mike is yours. Any message you want to give to anybody?
The person I need to thank is, I gotta thank my wife. It's countless hours that are sacrificed. Our relationship was really strong, and she has a big job. But man, I'll say, hey, I can't come home tonight. I got to meet with a parent. Or I got to meet here. I got to meet with somebody. Or I got to go meet with a prospective coach or whatever. And then the summer and the things we miss out on, life's experiences, because I've just made this commitment to coaching in our program. So I got to thank my wife for just unbelievable support, so that I could do a job that I really, really love. I'm very thankful. I think I have the greatest job in America for me, because I love getting up in the morning and going to school and working with the kids and stuff. But I got to thank my wife and my kids, because they sacrificed a lot when they were younger. I can't tell you how many times my kids would be on the field, 100 and some odd degree heat, and they'd just be right there at practice watching, because that's where they had to be,
Oh.
So my family, I got to thank my family, incredibly supportive, and Kim Adams she's a special person.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
It's a good message. I have one kind of staple question that I like to ask people is just kind of looking back. So if you could have a conversation with your 30-year-old self, so do a lot of coaching to kids and, developing other people. But knowing what you know now, being the person you are now, if you were talking to your 30-year-old self, a piece of advice you'd give?
Yeah, I think, we're talking about winning and losing, right? I think, the difference between winning battles and winning wars, I think I tried to win every battle when I was younger. There was something, I was going to win this one, I was going to win this one, I was going to win this one. But I didn't look down the road and say, hey, for every 3 wins you're going to lose the big one, you're going to lose the battle. And so, walk before you run a little bit, right? Be incredibly intentful in what you're doing. Have a vision for why. Don't just do it. Don't just work hard. Have a reason for why we're working hard. And if you do that, I think you're going to be more successful. But I'm the type of guy that has to make mistakes before I can learn. So I've made many, and I've gotten a lot of second chances, and I'm thankful for the people who've allowed me to have those second chances. But yeah, just, you don't have to win everything. And it kind of goes back, both those things I think tie together with, process versus results, and winning battles versus winning wars. And just be patient and believe in what you're doing.
Such a good, good advice.
It's great advice. Well, hey, we appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and going down memory lane.
Loose every once in a while.
No, it's good. It's really good.
Thank you so much. There's one thing that's really coming across it. It's very clear that you, I think, understand and take very serious the responsibility as kind of a teacher, coach, role model or figure to those that you're coaching. So I just thought it's really cool. It completely comes across in everything that you're doing. So thank you for sharing it, and thank you for what you're doing. Yeah, and I appreciate that. And one of the things that we didn't really talk about much was, the support we get. Our current staff is tremendous, right? And so being able to step back and allow others to coach, right? Because my personality can take over, and I have a pretty good idea about what we're supposed to do in most situations. But allowing others to coach and to hear their voices heard, and then to watch them grow, that's been pretty special too. So but I wouldn't have done that when I was younger. So I'm thankful for our staff, the guys that are in the trenches with us.